Hi, welcome to the other side. I'm sitting here with Andrew Sandler, who is a proprietor in Aspen, Colorado, which we are sitting in right now, and I wish you could see outside. We were going to shoot outside in 75, but it just turned bitter cold, 34 degrees and snowing. So here we are in a cozy little place by Aspen Mountain, and I'm going to have a conversation with Andrew, but I just want to say viewer discretion advised. This is going to take us to depths where I know some people are going to get very uncomfortable. They may not like it, they don't want to hear it, but remember, the other side is about all sides. There's always two sides, sometimes there's more than two sides, and the other side is a place for people to be open without criticism or judgment. So be kind, listen to what he has to say, and then you can make your own mind up. So Andrew, we go way back, and every time I get together with you, it's always fun. You're always a great guy, great personality, and when we veer off sitting next to each other at dinner, we always have these interesting conversations. And I remember last year what we were talking about with things that are kind of coming to fruition right now. And we've had the coronavirus come about, we've had the George Floyd murder and the race card, racism coming out, crazy. What is your take on all this? I know you have a strong opinion, and some may agree, some may not, but I like what you have to say. You're honest.
Well, I appreciate the kind intro. These subject matters definitely taboo, depending who we're speaking in front of. Obviously, the world now. Yeah, I think you and I have always kind of understood that there's something else going on, and while these topics and subject matters appear in the news, they also seem like they're a sleight of hand optic that they're trying to get us to believe while there's something else going on in the background. And when you have a complicit media, when I say complicit, I think any of us who are from Generation X and older have seen the fall of the media, from investigative journalism to where we are now, where it's something that's media has become something so basic. It's a line on a website. It's a quick impression when you're looking at an app. You know, a lot of us don't even read the headline, the articles anymore, and try and digest the content. We're just seeing headlines and quickly hitting share on Facebook or Twitter or whatnot. And so it's become an issue, especially when you're looking at the younger generation, and we're creating these phobias now with wearing masks and staying inside and let's all hide under our bed. And we're not looking at empirical data. We're not looking at the screw ups from the CDC, a lot of other countries that participated in this. And so you kind of just are scratching your head going, what the hell is going on here? And how do we keep ending up in these different situations and hoaxes? It seems like about every 30 days. And a lot of us seem to fall hook, line, and sinker with them. Instead of asking questions that would open up a conversation into not just the surface level of these issues, but more depth. More depth is needed. But when we all turn on the news and we're all busy every day doing our thing, and we're making dinner for the kids, we're taking kids to Little League, or we used to, now everyone's inside, everything is sensationalized. And so when we see that, that's what we're believing. And we're all decent people, we're all good-natured, so what are we to expect? Are we to just think that the media is lying to us, which they are most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time. And so it leaves it to the rest of us to try and share the truth about what's really going on. So for someone like me, it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter how late I'm up with the businesses that I have in Aspen. When I get home, I'm literally dedicating an hour to 2 hours a night of just trying to go down these rabbit holes and connect everything. And what I have found is so many of these issues and so many what we refer to as conspiracy theories are all interconnected together.
And it's interesting because you've been talking about this for a long time, and just now, during this presidency, are things starting to surface. And I feel and believe that there are a lot of people questioning what's happening now. I'm seeing that. There's a lot of sheep, and I hear conspiracy theories, it seems right in the moment, and then you hear the other side, and then it's like, that doesn't make sense, and that's crazy, and they have a good point on the other side. So it is some difficulty to try to get all of us to believe one thing.
Yeah,
We're very divided right now.
we are divided, and I try and encourage people to not look at it from a Republican Democrat perspective, a left-right perspective, because the people who are controlling all these situations are playing a top to bottom perspective. They're selling us on this right to left. The right to left doesn't exist. It's almost the same party if you really look at how these situations evolve and conclude. It's funny, like if we talk about, let's talk about the term conspiracy theory first. Where does that term come from? Well, we all remember November 22nd, 1963, when Kennedy was assassinated, and the CIA and the Warren Commission came up with the term conspiracy theory, and that was basically to label anyone who didn't accept this nonsensical narrative that a former Marine who was a CIA patsy was sitting in a warehouse, a book depository, shooting a rifle from about 1.5 miles away at a moving target going 20 miles an hour. If you didn't accept that narrative, you were labeled conspiracy theory. And that term has blossomed into where we are now. And people use it all the time if you don't accept the mainstream media's narrative. But it's important to know where these terms come from. It's important to know where everything comes from. And what I've come to realize in the 10 years of studying a lot of these things is all of these conspiracy theories are all interconnected. They're all interconnected to either protect or evade the truth that's out there.
And with the current situation that has arisen with the coronavirus, 5G, chemtrails, keeping us inside.
Sure.
Now with George Floyd's death and the protesting and then the rioters coming in and murders and fires and mayhem, what do you make of all this?
Wow, so many topics, and so many topics. They're all interconnected. But
you could take your time.
Where do we start? The most important thing to understand is that there is a bigger picture here. There is a very select few on Earth who control and run everything, and I mean everything. There's a military arm, a financial arm, a propaganda arm. So where does it come from? A lot of people always say to me, Andrew, there's no way what you're saying could be truthful because no one can keep these types of secrets. And I try and explain to them, like, you guys don't understand that everything is so compartmentalized, and not only compartmentalized, but people's lives are at stake with these things. Mm-hmm. Someone doesn't, toe the line of garbage rhetoric that they want, they're out. They're either going to jail or they're assassinated. And we see this time and time again from all different levels of society. I mean, the average whistleblower, I think, will last about 1.5 years. That we could go back and name a lot of them. But let's talk about where this comes from. You have to understand our history on Earth, and if you accept the narrative that you learned in elementary school, and I think a lot of this starts in elementary school with the indoctrination camps, as I refer to it. And I'm not trying to compare us to North Korea. Even that's a very interesting conspiracy we can get into. But from the moment your child goes to kindergarten is when the indoctrination starts, and when the re-education, I should say, and the kind of the perversion of our innate instincts is basically just kind of slapped away, and we're told what to think and how to think. From where do we start on this? From the fact that we have evolved from chimpanzees, from apes. When you can look, and I don't want to lose people here on this one topic, but people should be asking questions. Do we really come from apes? How many examples of evolution are there? Why isn't there more? Do we really believe that a single cell protein became a multi-protein organism that just started walking upright one day, and then eyeballs, which are just tissue, all of a sudden came out of nowhere and were formed? And right now, if you really ask yourself why you believe these things so much, the Earth is spinning at 16.66 thousand miles an hour in a 24-hour cycle while revolving around the sun at 66.66 thousand miles an hour, in a 365-day cycle. Well, do you feel that in your heart, in your mind? When you're outside, your instincts tell you that we are literally spinning that fast while revolving around the sun even faster than that.
It makes me dizzy just thinking about
it. Right? But these are the questions, and we blindly accept these things because it's wrapped up in mathematical algorithms that we had to study, learn, and regurgitate for a test. Our history, I think they literally push into us how racist we all were, killing Native Americans, enslaving the black population. They don't talk about how many slaves still exist in Africa right now. They don't talk about the fact that less than 4% of the American population before the Civil War even owned slaves. They just kind of cast this wide spell that we were all racist, and that we all had slaves, and that everything was terrible. I mean, you watch these movies that Hollywood puts out, and they're all very scripted until you read the books about Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, and you see a lot of the truths that exist in autobiographies and biographies, but don't exist on screen. So all of these things, and then we get to high school, and pretty much we've become the perfect foot soldier to adapt to the parameters that they want us to participate in society. You look when you get out of high school and you get out of college, most of us don't even know how to lease an apartment, lease a car, select health insurance. We literally know nothing but a bunch of things that worked on tests and reports that do not work in the real world. Well, why is that? Why is it, one size fits all in terms of how we teach kids? We don't teach the different learning styles. We don't teach the different talents. And so we get into our 20s, and I really believe there's a certain emptiness we all feel while we're trying to cultivate our passions and figure out what we do like, because so much of it was never understood or allowed to happen in the school systems. And it's almost like they were trying to reject all of our natural creativity, reject a lot of our soul, and just kind of manipulate us. And so then we get to college, and we all feel pressured to go to college. We all feel pressured to take on the student debt. We get out of school. We've got this sunken feeling that we owe $250,000 while we're earning $30,000 a year.
I totally, let me just interject on that. I totally understand with the education part. It's at home and in the schools.
Right.
What our parents were taught.
Sure.
So it goes down from generation to generation. So our parents are believers of that. Then we're learning it again in the schools. So we get it at home and in schools. So would it have to change at home also?
Yeah, absolutely. I listen, I used to give speeches to high school kids when I was 25, 26, and I used to start the conversation off with, kids, do you know what the difference between rich people and poor people is 95% of the time? It's knowledge and environment. Simply knowledge and environment. How we grow up, how we are nurtured. Are there two parents in the home? What's happening throughout our day? Kids are very susceptible to emotional trauma and to many other things. And they know this. I mean, question for you, and this is how we kind of break down what's happening in society. We all trust Disney, but what do we constantly see in every Disney movie? Someone loses a mother, someone loses a father. So, take Bambi. Your parents put you down, you're 3 to 5 years old, all of a sudden Bambi's mother is shot. Well, think about a child. A child's anchors are their parents. The closest thing to them on this earth are their parents. And all of a sudden we put them down in front of a screen, and a fawn's mother is basically assassinated. What does a 3-year-old do or a 5-year-old do? They immediately look for mom and dad and go, what is happening? Why is this happening? Well, that's something called fracturing. And it's basically when a traumatic incident happens in a young person's life and the brain creates scar tissue around that memory. They know this, and so when they fracture a child's mind, which can be fractured through child molestation or a variety of other things that are terrible, they can then reprogram you and rebuild you. You are at a vulnerable point, and so this happens repeatedly. If you watch these movies like Frozen or a variety of other ones that I can't really name right now, but it's always the loss of a parent or the loss of something close or something very traumatic that affects a child. And so why do they do that? Well, there's a seedy underbelly on earth of child pedophilia, sex trafficking, and this all ties into what we're seeing right now. People just don't realize this. And I don't mean to jump around, but I'm only jumping around to reconnect.
Because that's all connected.
It's all connected. Yes. So there's 800,000 children that go missing a year in America. There's 8 million children that go missing around the world. We don't talk about it. No one bats an eye. But for those of us who are aware of it, such as Donald Trump, who's done more than the last 5 presidents combined to bust up these pedophile rings. Now, why is he doing that? Again, and these are all interconnected to where we're going, but why is there no wall on the southern border? Why has this been such an issue just to put a wall to protect the sovereignty of American citizens in the country? Well, you've got sex trafficking, you've got gun running, you've you've got drug trafficking, you've got human trafficking, you've got organ harvesting. You have all of these things that are happening over the southern border from Texas to California. Now, so either the politicians are complicit or they're just stupid. I mean, but who wants to hurt a child? Who wants to hurt any human being? So these are basic issues that we can talk about, but what happens is they're disguised in these surface level characteristics of, no one is illegal. And everything is wrapped up in a political justification that really is not the issue, and we all fall for these things. So if we look at the George Floyd incident, I mean, just look at the video. I mean, if we gathered 20 people from the street right now and put them in a classroom with the George Floyd video, and we showed every camera angle, because they're out there, I've watched them all, and you really look at what's happening to George, you almost go, is this a gag? How are people falling for this? I mean, between the different badges that two of the cops have, Derek Chauvin, whose knee is on his neck supposedly, and I'm not dismissing the supposed death here. I'm not dismissing any of that. I'm just trying to bring in a different perspective on what's happening here. But everything is wrapped up in magic, basically, optics. What are the odds that Derek Chauvin is married to the Asian cop's wife? What are the odds that they're getting a divorce? What are the odds that Derek Chauvin and George Floyd worked together for 17 years at a strip club? What are the odds that they're acting like they don't know each other? What are the odds that he was arrested across the intersection by two totally different cops, two totally different police cars, and the next video we see, after he was already handcuffed, not putting up a struggle at all, is supposedly four cops, sitting on his body, sitting on his neck, and then we look at another camera, and I don't want to just go down this whole road of Masons, Freemasons, and satanic rituals or anything, but on the garbage can, newly stenciled, which looked like it was done a few hours before that, says 666. What are the odds that he died on 33rd Street? What are the odds that there's a Masonic temple 2 blocks away from that? Now, while people don't understand what I'm talking about, 90% of the police in our country in these major cities are Freemasons. There's an entire brotherhood that people don't understand. So if you are trying to pull a fast one over someone, if you are trying to get a certain buy-in to allow these what we call false flag events, these kind of what we used to say government-driven narratives to push a certain agenda. Now it's not government, now it's a lot more deep state-driven narratives to push a certain agenda that happens around us all the time. From being quarantined with coronavirus, even though now we know it affected 0.0015% of the population, to Italy coming out and revising their numbers and saying that 99% of their numbers of deaths were totally wrong. At some point you have to start asking these questions. So even if you look at what's going on in the back of the George Floyd video, you've got diesel fuel, it says for 99 cents. That tells you that this video might have been made well before the date that they said it happened. On the, the Obama Foundation's website, 8 days before George was killed, they had a picture of George that said rest in peace. I mean, no one talks about these things. No one even brings them up. And so you start going, how many of these very strange coincidences need to take place before someone goes, okay, this is mathematically impossible for all of these things to keep happening. And so they wrap these things up in political correction and sell us on it. And so we went from being quarantined to where we could all die if we went outside and we're breathing around each other, even though a herd mentality or herd immunity and humans interacting together is how our immune system builds up. I mean, we look at children and babies that crawl on the floor, right? I mean, think about all
floors.
Exactly. I mean, they put their hands in their mouths. Like, we go skiing, we're grabbing the chairlifts. Everything about our bodies is made to accept a certain amount of germs for our immune systems to build and rebuild. A lot of us, in the year 2020, take medicines that are not pharmaceuticals to help our immune systems. I mean, we're much stronger than we're given credit for. And so these narratives are just constantly pushed on us. And it says something a lot about humanity in terms of how loving we are. But a select few people got 7.5 billion people to self-quarantine without question. So that says a lot of good things about humanity. But then the other thing is, a select few people got 7.5 billion people to self-quarantine without question. And that says the other thing about humanity is that there's a lot of programming, there's a lot of indoctrination. And so then, when that isn't working, we're not staying in our homes, and a lot of these conservative states, such as Florida, we're restarting the economy and opening up. And we saw this in other cities, and even our governor here in Colorado, Governor Paulus, who's more of a conservative Democrat in terms of saying, okay, you know what, our sales revenues are so low, our taxes are so low, we need to jumpstart the economy. But don't even look at it that way. If you just look at the data that the CDC came out with, which they revised multiple times, you're watching a Dr. Fauci on TV, stand next to Trump, constantly say disinformation. One Monday he says this, Tuesday he says that. The Surgeon General, very confusing. Mm-hmm. The Surgeon General, who's a great guy, it almost like he did a 180 on wearing masks.
I remember that. It's like, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, and it's just unhealthy to keep when I'm outside.
It's very unhealthy.
I try not to wear it. I need fresh air.
You need fresh air, and that's the beauty of Mother Nature. You're outside, you're wearing a mask, you're depleting yourself of 50% oxygen, your body's expelling CO2 gas, which you're then inhaling.
Right.
I mean,
I get it that people wear it, and I get, on an airplane or going into the grocery store, because you want to be respectful of others that feel that way. So there's two sides of that too. Do you especially here in Aspen, I know when you are going into a store, they're mandating you have to have it on.
But your constitutional rights and the real facts about masks shouldn't stop where someone's feelings begin. Mm-hmm. Emotions should never trump logic, and we've reached the point in this country where you have a lot of emotional outbursts that are trumping logic. We're seeing that with these riots and these looters. Let's just say that the George Floyd video is totally factual, and the white cop purposely kneeled on another human being's neck for 8 minutes, which sounds totally nuts. But let's just say it's true. Does the reaction to the crime, does it outweigh what happened? Where is the equality in it? Where is the intelligentsia going? Listen, if there's systemic racism or if there's a problem in all of these police departments, then we need to look at that. But to burn down all of our cities, to hurt, our neighbors' businesses, to burn down low-income housing, for a bunch of rich people who are chanting, yes, go burn down those low-income housing until the fire comes to their gated communities. At what point do we sit there and say, hey, this is totally effing crazy? Mm-hmm. There's got to be some leaders out there. You've got Biden jumping on the bandwagon, Hillary's jumping on the bandwagon. These are people, Biden's been in office for 48 years. If he wanted to cure these issues back in the 70s, why didn't he? The 80s, why didn't he? At some point you have to say there's got to be something else going on here. These constant sleight of hand tactics don't make any sense. I think you wanted me to jump down some of these rabbit holes and really open them up. Is there,
only if you feel comfortable.
Is there one in particular you want me to go down?
Wow. Well, the controversy over certain people that are rioting, were they in fact hired? And where does that go in the whole scheme of things? So not just people protesting, were these people that have seen these videos that they look like they were hired and they were bricks were placed in strategic places in the cities? That's all like confusing stuff you see on Facebook. And
listen, while social media could be the death of a civilization, thank God for it at this point, because a lot of the good guys have turned it around and are putting out a lot of facts and truth. Of course, there's a lot of disinformation out there, but once you start understanding that there's a foundation of truth, and once you understand what that foundation looks like, it's not hard to discern between the nonsense and the sensible things that are out there. I'm trying to think where the best place to start here. If we really want to talk about this, basically the earth has been run by 13 bloodline families for the last millennia, if not longer. There have been different societies who have come and gone on earth, all the way from Antarctica to Atlantis to Egypt. If we really believe 40,000 Jews built the pyramids, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how that could possibly be.
And I see your shirt, a nice Jewish guy we have over here.
When you look at the world and you look how amazing the world is, and you look at Machu Picchu, you look at the Giza pyramids, you look at all these antiquities, you have to start saying to yourself, did these things really emerge from a culture that didn't have the technology that we have. Perhaps they had far advanced technology that exceeds our technology now. You know, I always like to point this out, but why do we all like going to old world Europe? When you see the Sistine Chapel, you see Notre Dame, you see all these amazing cathedrals built in the 12th and 13th century. You know, you see these statues, these gargoyles, the statue of David. You look at these things that people did. You know, they tell us that Michelangelo was on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, which is 200 feet up in the air, basically. I mean, it's huge. How did he get up there? How was he held up there? What harnesses were they using? What cranes were they using? What tools were they using to do all these things? You know, they tried to tell us that this took hundreds and hundreds of years, and you know, generations of fathers and sons were doing all of this stuff. Well, I would say I don't think we have the technology or the architectural willpower now to recreate a lot of these things that existed back then. You know, if you look at the World's Fair in Chicago in the 1870s and 1880s, there is a skyline of buildings that far exceed anything that we build today. You know, so much of our building is stucco and glue and cement. But when you look at the level of details manicured in these old world buildings and the history, and then they tell us that all these things were destroyed by fires, you know, the Great Fire in Chicago, San Francisco, Denver. At some point you go, you serious? You know, at some point you look at these things and you go, this can't possibly be, when you look at the technology that they had back then that they never taught us about. You know, if you Google Tartaria and you Google the mud floods, and there are so many details that absolutely contradict all the nonsense that they taught us in school. And it just takes people to look at it. You know, we've hit a point where it's like, if I write something on Facebook that someone feels, you know, that they're being picked on with a certain intelligence that I'm sharing, which to me is like breathing. I'm just sharing a lot of the things that I know to be true. They're like, well, cite a source, prove it to me. How do you prove something to someone who is so used to watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, and those are the sources that they're talking about? Like, what do they want me to cite for them that would make them believe or take a leap of faith? You know, so many people have taken this invisible leap of faith that everything I'm saying is totally false. Well, I want to know where that leap of faith comes from, versus why not just ask me a bunch of questions? Or why not just start with Google? You know, why not look at something called Operation Mockingbird, when the media was taken over in the late 1950s, all periodicals, all the major networks on TV. The CIA has had a hand in all major journalism. They still do. It's called the 4 a.m. talking points. There's 5 corporations that own everything now. And what people don't understand is, even though there are 5 discernible, you know, corporations, whatever that means, an LLC, an S corp, all these people are on the same team. They all come from the same families. They utilize symbolism that a lot of the average person does not know exists, but is constantly thrown in our face. But because we are so devoid of information and facts, or when we see them, we immediately dismiss them, because it fractures what we believe is our reality. When your line of thinking is fractured, the way people think it is, they immediately dismiss everything as a conspiracy theory. Well, they're not conspiracy theories. And what we've seen in the last 3.5 years with Trump, I mean, what did they try to do this man? Russia collusion, Ukrainian phone call, impeachment, coronavirus, George Floyd. I mean, and what they do is they pin everything on him. You know, I mean, how many more facts and evidence do we need from the Mueller investigation, from the lack of data to impeach, from everything that we have that rejects this narrative that Trump is this big bad guy who is in cahoots with Putin? I mean, what kind of a billionaire decides to leave his billionaire lifestyle, an amazing business, amazing family, to get ridiculed, you know, by the press on a daily basis, just so he could be bribed by Putin, right? I mean, that's the narrative that they're pushing. And at some point you go, okay, if he's a billionaire, how much money would Putin have to bribe him to make a dent, you know, in his checking account, to where he's like, yes, we have to do this? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And at some point you go, why are they pushing this narrative so much? You know, who is Michael Steele? Where did the Russian dossier come from? Who is Fusion GPS? Who are these law firms who are complicit? Baker Hostetler, you know, Perkins Coie. You know, at some point, and then when you look at these law firms, you look at Fusion GPS, you look at all of them, and then you find out that all these people are intermarried to each other. I mean, all these people are intermarried to each other in DC. This isn't by accident. I mean, these are how the foundations of corruption are made and created. You know, you look at the Obama administration. I mean, I think 65% of them were married to journalists at NBC, ABC, CNN. I mean, all this is important information. You know, while a president is forced to divest himself of all of his businesses, his personal life basically, and give these things up, what they don't tell you is that even though there definitely is a process to go through of scrutiny for a lot of these people to get their their clearance levels, there's still so much corruption in that. You know, if you're the White House spokesperson, but you're also married to a CNN anchor, I mean, how can that be legal, right? How can that not be looked upon and go, okay, maybe there's a problem here? But they don't do that. And so you can see how these levels of corruptions are able to snowball into something so much greater, and that's where we are right now.
Let me ask you a question. This is the one I go back and forth on because I have a lot of friends and family have a belief in one way and the other way. I want to ask you what your feeling is. I'm very open to hearing. I'm very neutral about the Gates Foundation and what his intention is with vaccinations. That's a big thing for me,
okay.
Vaccinations. I don't personally like taking vaccinations, but a lot of people feel very strongly. And where does he fit into all this? Where he just came right into it.
You know, let's not even beat around the bush about it. Everything is about...
Never beat around the bush.
No. Everything is about control. Everything is about control. You look at how far we've moved away from the Constitution, from the constitutional republic that we were all born into. You look how far we've deviated from that. I mean, Governor Paulus, the state assembly here in Colorado, I think it's called, I don't want to botch this one up, SP 163, that's in the House right now. It forced vaccinations of children in Colorado, even if they're being homeschooled, private schooled. I mean, and that's just the beginning. They want to force vaccination on all of us adults. Now, why would you want to do that? What data is there to show that any of this works? You know, when we were children, our mothers would have chickenpox parties, right? And they'd get us all together to get this virus, right? To get it out of the way, because it was much easier to deal with it as a child than an adult. Now we want to vaccinate everyone. You know, when you pickle the immune system, I mean, God gave us these immune systems that are there to protect us. I mean, when a baby is born, for the first 3 months, I think it's 3 to 6 months, it has its mother's antibodies all over him or her. So why would you inject a baby with hepatitis B vaccine? Is the baby going to a bar to pick up a dude or a girl, you know, at 4 days of age and get laid? I mean, right. Literally, it's like an SNL skit. You know, and who wants to force these foreign entities into our bodies? I mean, it's formaldehyde. There's dog gut, caterpillar gut in some of these, and a bunch of other chemicals that you find in all of our cleaning apparatuses. You know, but people just blindly go, well, why would anyone want to hurt me? Why would someone want to inject me with something that would hurt me? It's all about control. And what people don't like to talk about because they don't know about it, and when I bring up the words population control, which these people believe in, Agenda 2030, I think now affectionately called Agenda 2021. Bill Gates is a major part of this. You know, people don't know Bill Gates' story. People don't know his father ran Planned Parenthood for decades. Was a major fan of Margaret Sanger, who loved the idea of eugenics from the Nazis. It was just finding the perfect race and aborting black children, aborting Jews, immersing the right genetics to form the right person. This is what these people talk about. You know, we don't talk about things like, let's just talk about the 13 bloodline families, and let's talk about the names that we know. Let's just talk about a couple of them. The Rothschilds, they own all the centralized banking systems in the world, the fiat banking systems, the Federal Reserve. How did the Federal Reserve Act get passed? Over Christmas in 1913. Here's a great conspiracy you don't know. You know, JP Morgan and a lot of these other bankers went to Jekyll Island off of the state of Georgia. They had a top secret meeting about how they were going to impose a fiat banking system and eventually get us off the gold standard and control everything through this centralized banking. And the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 was unconstitutional. There were 4 people who didn't want to do it. Well, what did they do with those 4 people? Guess how those 4 bankers who were adamantly opposed to this idea, guess how they died? They died on a little tragic boating accident called the Titanic in 1912. This boat, which was impenetrable to any type of accident or any type of issue, we were told that it hit an iceberg and it sank. But what are the odds of that happening with 4 of the bankers who were opposed to the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, and this happens, I think, October 12th, 1912. These are the things they don't teach us. And so why are they so adamant to teach us about how the Titanic really went down in 1912? Because on a level, they need our buy-in. They need our buy-in to let these things happen. It's called seeding consciousness. And when they do this and we accept it, we subconsciously accept it, we overtly accept it, they can get away with it. I mean, we look at 9/11. I mean, for years, I think Twin Towers were built with reinforced steel in 1977, I believe, it was 77. They told us through album covers, through lyrics, through movies, that they were going to take these towers down. Now, of course, we weren't looking for these. We didn't understand that this is something serious. We're all just fun-loving, innately loving human beings. Who are we to go, okay, we're all being played. There's a group of people who are trying to control us, and they need our buy-ins to do that. It's part of their makeup. Who am I referring to? I'm referring to the Illuminati. I'm referring to the Masons. And while people might hear these terms now, about 30 minutes into this podcast, these people exist. These underground clubs, if you will, exist. The Bilderberg Group exists. These meetings happen, whether it's in Switzerland, whether it's in France, and they're secretive. It's all easy to see. We have YouTube out there, we have Facebook out there, we have libraries of virtual data online where you can see them. You no longer need to run to the library to look these things up in the encyclopedias. You can trace all these things back. They're right out there to see. And all of these things are interconnected. People don't know this, but while we're sitting here, I hate to break it to everyone, but the Queen Elizabeth was just dethroned. The crown was just dethroned.
When did you hear this?
Well, listen, this happened with Trump. I think it was July 2018 when she agreed and she understood that her bloodline was not the actual real bloodline when they traced it all back. And there's been people fighting for this for a long time now. But his name is Greg Hallett, and you can Google him. He has now chosen the name King John III. The crest on, I'm sorry, help me out with the palace name in London.
Buckingham
Palace. Sorry, I know.
It's altitude.
I know. Tough one.
The altitude.
Buckingham Palace, the seal of the Queen was just taken down. A new seal was put up.
News to me.
And I don't want to take away from the real topic we're talking about, but these things are happening, and there's a lot of good things happening in the background with the Trump administration and military intelligence. And maybe we should jump to that real quick on how Trump was selected. So what a lot of people don't know is that Obama was a CIA plant. His parents were CIA. He was basically raised by the CIA. The Saudis paid for all of his schooling. It's why everything has been sealed, from his birth certificate to his transcripts, his report cards, everything. Everything has been hidden. Now, why? Why? Instead of chastising people like me for asking these questions, everyone should be looking into this. Yes, it's easy to say, well, they would have never let him be president for 2 terms if he wasn't an American. And listen, that's for you to answer, but maybe it tells you how far deep this goes, how far deep these conspiracies go, that they're willing to let a foreign agent who doesn't fit the parameters of presidential material in terms of the legalities of who you need to become president. But what did this man spend 8 years doing? Subverting the Constitution, treason, sedition, transferring much of our wealth over to China. It's called the 16-year takedown of America. Obama was the first 8 years. Hillary was the second 8 years. What I try and get everyone to understand is, forget Democrats, forget Republicans. This isn't a Democrat-Republican thing. This is a deep state thing. This is something much bigger than Democrat-Republican. This has nothing to do with politics. Politics is a shell game. It's a vehicle that they use to separate us because there are, I guess, two different types of humans that believe in one or the other. Some are conservative, some are liberal.
Another side.
Another side. But I like to say, especially if you're a Democrat, are you a JFK Democrat? Are you an Obama liberal? Or are you a George Soros knight? And a George Soros knight is someone who is Antifa, who is being paid to do these riots and is being paid to basically get people to buy into a lot of this nonsense about how we got here and where we are. So Obama was the first 8 years. During this, military intelligence, as Obama was eroding the military, eroding the budgets, firing, I think, 33 of the top generals of the world, who obviously are American generals, destroying our defenses, there were key military people who said, what the hell do we do? Do we form a coup and try and take out Obama? Well, that was thought about, and that was going to happen. And then they realized, what were they going to do after that? Come to the podium and sound like me and say all the things that I'm saying? And where would they start? Would they start with the 13 bloodlines, sell you on the Illuminati, tell you about the Masons, tell you about how they've been pulling the wool over everyone's eyes for well over 1,000 years? Tell you how the Vatican is the propaganda arm, London is the financial arm, the Pentagon is the military arm for everything that's happening on Earth over the last 100 years. But they tell you that the Rothschilds have been funding both sides of every war, basically since the 10th century. No, you wouldn't even know what to believe. You'd be like, what the hell is happening right now? You're not ready. And so they decided against that. They also decided they weren't funded enough to do that. And they said, we need to find a person who can not only self-fund their campaign, but best 16 other Republican politicians. And then best Hillary, as we know her, was a former First Lady, a senator, a Secretary of State. And the real truth of the matter is she is what's called a high satanic priestess from the true parties that she is affiliated with. Now, I know when I say that, we're scaring half of the half of the people watching this away, but unfortunately, these things are true. And a lot of this stuff is documented. There's a lot of things I could mention, but I don't want to scare the crap out of everybody.
Right, just some.
Just some. So military intelligence sent a couple disciples down to meet with Trump. And this was basically top secret, totally illegal for them to do. And they sent them down and they met with Trump. And from what I understand, and everything that I've read, and everything I've gathered from what I have seen over the last couple of years, they spent and put this man through a 2-week education seminar, basically. To basically, while we've only barely scratched the surface of what I could tell you, they put him through a 2-week course and showed him everything. And this is a man who was best friends with JFK Jr. I mean, so many videos and pictures of him and JFK Jr. JFK Jr., who a lot of us don't believe is dead. I'll tell you why. They found C4 explosives on his plane before he was going to take off. And for a week, they planned what was the best way to cover up his death. We know what happened. I think, was it July 6, 1999? There was a variety of reasons why they needed to take him out. He, beyond the publication of George magazine, there's a lot of quotes of him basically saying that he wanted to get to the bottom of who assassinated his father, and he had no problem burning down the whole government trying to do so. There are different clues that he left in the magazine, in the first publication, the second, that tells you that he may not be dead. There's so many other things that I could bring up too that would lead us to the conclusion that this man isn't dead, including how they found the bodies, including the recordings that they have of his voice when speaking to the tower, his flight instructor helping to create the illusion of this death.
Let me ask you a question. Why would he bring his wife and his sister-in-law on that journey if it was
great?
Just
exactly.
with him?
Great question. And so, they were married. You could look at the family dynamics of who were you, if you were going to hide your death and still be alive, whether potentially to have children or grow old, or say, listen, we can't come out of hiding for 20, 25 potential years, even though there's so much evidence that this man is still alive, including seeing Carolyn Bessette
I saw some of those in some of these conspiracy documentaries.
And so, and think about how we just labeled it, right? We just said conspiracy theory.
I said that because I want to be like, this is like.
Yeah, it could be true, it could be not true. How do we even talk about it?
Right.
So what is the right way to talk about something like this? Do we immediately just cast it aside saying this is total nonsense? The fact that we're even talking about this shows how, stupid I might be for even bringing it up. But there's so much more evidence that the man is around than not around. And there's so much more evidence that Carolyn is there and her sister is there.
I saw something and then I saw that he really likes Trump and there was a connection.
Loves Trump.
Him and Trump. Forgot what I saw, but that was the connection. And
so
Trump may even know that he's alive. Is that true?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yes.
I've watched certain things.
And don't feel bad about that.
I know.
Don't feel bad about that. Yeah.
That's why it's called The Other Side, because I want to know. I question everything.
Yeah, and we should. And again, we don't realize that there is so much more to Earth than what was taught to us. I mean, so much more. So much more in terms of the wisdom, in terms of love and vibration. We as human beings, everything in the universe is built off of love, vibration, which is, two terms or synonymous with the term frequency. Mm-hmm. While we were in quarantine, and so many billions of people were in quarantine, Earth got a bit of a rest. Mm-hmm. And Earth is a living organism herself. And her frequency was peaking. It's called a Schumann resonance. And you can see this online whenever you want.
So something positive is coming out of this.
Something very positive is coming out of this. And while we are stuck on the surface seeing all of these horrendous things, and all of these things, all of this negative energy, this evil energy is meant to bog us down. It is meant to kill our will, to kill our spirit. There are so many examples of spells that are cast on the human public. We don't even realize it. Let's talk about, first off, did I answer every question? Do I need to go back to military intelligence in 12?
You did. I have one question on everything you said so far.
Okay.
Because I get this from people, loved ones in my life, people that really care about me. And if I watch one of these things and I mention it to somebody, they get all upset. They're like, but what is this serving you in your life? Why are you listening to it, or why are you watching it?
That's a good question. That's a great question.
And then I go off it for a week and I'm like, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to watch anymore. But then my curiosity, I have this innate human nature of, I want to know the truth. I just really would like to know what is going on in our world. I'm a part, we're all connected. And part of our connection is knowing the truth about what's going on.
We are.
So help me out.
Okay. All right.
Because I know you like it, but if
so,
someone loves me and cares about me and they're like, don't get yourself caught up in all that stuff. It's not doing you any good.
Yes.
What would you say if someone said that to you?
First off, it is doing you good. Listen, we all have souls. And about 1 inch or 2 inches beneath our chest plate here sits your soul. We are not just consciousness. We are not just random cellular biology. That is not what we are. We chose to reincarnate on these different timelines. I mean, Diane, for you and I to be sitting in Aspen, Colorado in 2020, having this conversation, and then I know you're a big believer in astrology and a lot of other things that a lot of people don't take seriously, but it's real. And from the moment you're born, you have something called a human design. Like your fingerprints. There is an entire world of wisdom out there that we knew to exist before we reincarnated here. I mean, one of the reasons why I got into this, and I didn't mean to get into this, when I was born, I remembered past lives, and that sounds totally nuts when you hear it. But when my parents first took me to Aspen in 1982, they put me down in front of the prospector. I smelled a wood-burning fireplace, and it triggered a past life immediately. And I think I was 3 then. And I'll never forget, my dad used to walk me to school every day in New York City, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. And the man would hold my hand and we'd just walk, and I'd go, I swear to God, I was just here. How did I get back here? I swear to God, I was just here. Why am I doing this again? And from the womb to the age of 9, babies and children can choose to leave this dimension, we call it death, because our souls are still more closely resembled to that alternative spiritual realm than the human world that we end up getting hardened to. And what I mean by that is, from about 9 to 12, and psychologists will tell you this, our egos come out, our sense of self comes out. And so our souls take a backseat to the ego. And so we forget a lot of this old world wisdom that we were born with. And so what is the school system's role? Where does the indoctrination come in? Well, you look how brilliant children are. They're full of just love, compassion for the most part, 99.9%. Babies are miraculous to us. I kind of make this joke on Facebook when people are always posting pictures of their kids. I'm like, listen, let's not forget, by age of 15, we all grow up and become douchebags like the rest of us. And I say that lighthearted, but you see those soulful kids, and what do? We erode their character, we erode that soul, we erode that creativity in the school system. Because we just start, we instead of letting them play, instead of letting them be curious, instead of letting them learn in a fashion that is more fit for children, we force this one-size-fits-all learning style, and we know this learning style is bad. And we all just kind of go, listen, I went through it, you have to go through it. But what did the education system do? It literally eroded all of those baby-like, childlike, spiritual-like, innate abilities that we all come into the world with. And I just think that's so powerful. And so when we come about 9 or 10, our sense of self really kicks in, and our maturity level gets us to a different place, and it starts paralleling a lot of the education, and we start basically fitting into those molds that they want us to fit into. And so when that happened to me, I forgot about the past lives, I forgot about all the smells, I forgot about all the deja vu. And then when I was about 22, 21, it came back again, and I was a senior when 9/11 happened. And I just remember going, just basic things. What are the odds of a guy with a video camera at 7-something in the morning, standing there, drinking coffee with his wife, and all of a sudden he looks up and, there's United airline jet, whatever, flying into a building. But no one asks these questions. There's so many other oddities about that day, and let's not get off subject about what I'm saying, but that triggered a lot of those feelings that I had. And so while I could sit here and say I was suicidal, when not suicidal in the way of wanting to kill myself, but suicidal in the way of wanting to remember what was back on the other side. And so that came back to me. And of course, just like any other college graduate, you're focused on work. I started a company, and while I didn't know what to research, I started reading all these conservative books and all these liberal books. One side made more sense than the other to me, the conservative side, which was more about self-reliance, self-governance, using your own found God-given talents to accomplish what you want. It just kind of made more sense to me, but I didn't know I was trying to go past that. So as I got older, about 29 or 30, my dad's killed on his motorcycle, and I felt this abandonment from him leaving, but he wasn't gone. And so he would come to me in my dreams. And I remember it was about a month after he died. And there we are, and we're throwing craps together in Vegas. And he just turns around and looks at me, gives me a nod, and he goes, "Hey, are we good? Are we good?" And I looked at him like, "Yeah, we're good, we're good." And you don't realize you're in a dream, but what is a dream? What does it mean when our body is in REM sleep? Does it mean our soul can interdimensionally travel? Does it mean that the other parts of our brain that we say we don't use, they say we only use 10% of our brain, are we engaging that brain? Are we engaging more of our DNA than they tell us that we have, instead of this double helix DNA? Might there be more that they're lying to us about that allows us to have these dreams? A lot of people don't talk about this, but what makes women so special? God chose women as the vehicle, as the portal to reincarnate souls, through these wombs. And we basically lie to women and we tell them, my body, my choice. Of course, it's your body, your choice. But God gave you the ability to literally reincarnate souls from a different dimension back onto this third density. And what we don't talk about,
amazing, special thing. Yeah,
it's very amazing. Special. And we try and sell women and men that we are the exact same and we're all equal. No, women have a lot more specialty value propositions and amazingness than men do. Men have other specialness that's totally different. But that's why I think women are more emotionally charged. You guys are so much more closely resembled to a spiritual identity in a spiritual realm that men don't come close to. Your femininity alone is so important to the balance of Earth. And so when we try and sell women that they can do the same thing as men can, and they should be doing everything that we do, and vice versa. It's total nonsense. It's a blending of the genders. I mean, that's a whole other conspiracy we can talk about. Why do they keep pushing transgenderism in school? Why are they pushing a sexual awakening with 5-year-old kids, and forcing masturbation and teaching these curriculums in the school systems? Like, why would you want to pervert a young mind into something that they're not ready for? I mean, all of these things. So that's how it happened for me, which I wanted to remember what happened when you died. I wanted to know why I could have these dreams with my dad that seems so real.
It's a special thing.
It is. And so when you get into these other topics, they're all, again, connected because everything is hidden.
Wow. This is like, I know we can go on. I'm probably going to have Andrew back talking about a lot more, but I just want to say you took us all around. We hit on a lot of different topics, and it's up to you guys, conspiracy theories or not. This is a side. This is believed by many, because I talk to a lot of people, and of course there are the naysayers that don't believe any of it, but it's good to hear it. It's good to get it out. It's good to know what's a possibility. So I thank you very much for talking about all this. And if you have time this week, maybe we'll do it again, because we didn't even hit on the chemtrails. There's a lot more to talk about.
I'd be happy to come back. Listen, these are my favorite. This is my passion. I was very busy.
Do it again while I'm
Please,
here.
let's do it.
Okay. Thanks for joining us on the other side, and watch Andrew, and hopefully I'll get him back for part 2 of this.